And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to. Lots to talk about. Lindsey Graham. Yes, Lindsey Graham, Republican senator from South Carolina, told reporters that he believes there are more votes for acquittal today than there were yesterday. And I got to be honest, I'm going, really? That actually means that you think someone was actually listening on your side of the aisle? He goes on to this whole thing. He goes, because hypocrisy is pretty large for these people, standing up to, rioters when they came to my house, Susan Collins' house. I think it's very hypocritical presentation by the House. Basically saying that, Antifa, they break windows. They do things. So we should forgive all of it. He blames the Capitol Police for not shooting the rioters. He said, I got mad. I mean, these police had every right to use deadly force. They should have used it. He said the people in charge of securing the Capitol let the country down. So I'll be honest. I listen to this and I go, militia types. This is kind of a call to arms for you, isn't it? I mean, isn't this the battle you wanted? The old Tony Soprano. Next time you come, you better come heavy. I'll be honest. It's kind of interesting to hear Lindsey say this. And as I said before, you had Lauren Boebert, the gun fetish girl from Colorado, who wished she had her Glock with her while she was in the Capitol, so she could cap a couple of the rioters, who she herself actually, cheered on, which is weird, but it is what it is. Now, some of the interesting justifications, I got to be honest, very, very funny. Because while Lindsey Graham is trying to do the whataboutisms and the both sides, and Antifa did this, so we only understand the Antifa crowd, all those riots. We kettled people, we arrested hundreds. We had units coming by and disappearing people, just snatching people off the streets. But you're not going to hear them talk about that. My favorite, one of my favorites, is Alan Dershowitz. On the new Fox Newsmax, he said that, I guess channeling his inner Johnny Cochran, he said, Trump didn't incite, he invited. And I'm going, it's like if it don't fit, you must acquit. This is his thing. If it's not inciting, it's inviting. It really is this kind of justification where I see none. These people have been ramping up this kind of anger and fervor for a very long time, and they had to know. They knew, and they did exactly as the House managers pointed out during the last 2 days. It's over now. They've presented their case, and understand, most of the country didn't listen. Most of the country's still worried about how they're going to put food on the table, and worried about getting the kids, to Zoom school on time, and worried about, making sure that they pay their rent. And while people like me watched and looked at it and said, yeah, okay, well, knew that. Of course, that's not new. They didn't really come out with anything really new. Me, I'll be honest, if I was the guy, if I was Jamie Raskin, I would have gone through a lot of the stuff that they went through. But the guy who defecated in the Capitol, I would have focused on him. I'd have focused on his face. He would have been the face of the coup. Because I don't know what makes you think, what? This is so important of a moment that I just got to go right here. I'm going to leave my mark on history. Just bizarre. Now, if you listen to Jamie Raskin and the House managers who laid out the case very meticulously, came out with some of the most outraging videos that I've seen. Basically everything that we knew, we've talked about, but very well presented. it didn't move the needle. And it's not moving the needle of the people in our political class. And their argument, I'm of the mindset of you punish, and rightfully so, bad deeds. You do the crime, you got to do the time. Their closing argument was basically, look, if you want more violence, if you want more of this, if you don't convict Trump, we're going to get more of this. He's going to be back. And it's a very defensive posture. And maybe he will, maybe he won't. I'm worried about the next president. I'm not worried about Trump. I don't think he's back in 4 years. I'm worried about the Josh Hawleys. I'm worried about the next wannabe. I'm worried about the next person who realizes that, you know what, our system is broken and we're never going to hold one of these people accountable. We're just not. We're not holding anybody accountable. Because after looking at all of this evidence, honestly, truthfully, after looking at all this evidence, if you're a Republican senator, there are only two reasons that you're not voting to convict Donald Trump. One of them, and the first one, and not even the big one. The first one is you're a coward. That's the first one. You're a coward. You're afraid that what's happening to Liz Cheney and Ben Sasse is going to happen to you. That you're going to take a beating in the next election that's coming up in 22. That you're going to get a primaried from the far right, and you're going to have to defend yourself on why you sold your soul, your Donald Trump soul. And then there's the other part, and I would argue the more reasonable part. You're complicit. You were part of this. The reality is nearly half of the Republicans in the Senate, nearly half of the people who are judging this, did the same thing. They perpetuated the big lie. They were out there saying that, the election was stolen. And it's one of these things where you go, these are the people. The criminals are the ones who are judging the criminal. Do you think he's going to be convicted? No. In fact, this trial is screwed up from start to finish on all fronts. Look, I have a problem with the way the Democrats have done it as well. The fact that Pat Leahy is the judge and a juror, I have a serious problem with. But I don't know who else we go to get, since the Chief Justice said, "Oh, I want none of this," which left it to the Democrats to go, well, we got to have somebody. So they chose probably one of the people with the most integrity in the Senate, Pat Leahy, but I still don't like it. And now you find out that the Republican senators were meeting with the Trump defense lawyers on laying out a strategy. And I know this is the political game. But if you're going to call this a trial, this isn't how we're used to trials running. Ted Cruz actually, told reporters that they were talking legal strategy and that they were, bouncing arguments on where things are and where they're going to go and all this. And I'm going, I don't know if I'm Trump, do I feel comfortable with Ted Cruz, the guy who I called his wife ugly? Am I comfortable with him defending me? And truth be told, Donald, you're perfectly safe. Coward. Cruz is a coward. He's going to fall in line. He will have an orange nose at the end of this because he wants to be president someday. The soul already sold. It just is what it is. Now, the Trump defense team, they claim that they're only going to take half of the time that they're allotted to lay out their case. And to be honest, if I were them, I would put on no defense whatsoever. I would just say, you know what, they haven't proved their case. Nobody cares. Let's just stop. Probably not going to do that, but we'll see. We'll see what happens on Monday. They're taking Friday off for a religious holiday, and we'll see where they come back to on Monday. And we'll see how the news cycle goes over the next couple of days. And see if it continues to have legs. We will most certainly see. Some other big news today: Joe Biden and our federal government purchased another 2 million additional doses of the vaccine. That is going to help. That puts us somewhere around 600 million doses. That's going to help us make sure that everyone gets their 2 shots. Everyone gets done. In fact, Anthony Fauci says that by April, the limitations on the vaccine will be null. Everyone will have access to it. And we can do like I've been saying. We talked yesterday with my friend Bob Ney, and Bob was saying, look, I had to drive 2 hours south to find a Kroger that would let me come in because they can only do 4 people an hour. And now I got to wait another week before I can. That's insane to me. In Colorado, they had an In-N-Out burger that came in. People were lined up in their cars for miles, waiting 12 hours to get a crummy hamburger. And I'm like, well, how about with the crummy hamburger? While you put your money out to buy the burger and grab the bag, we jab you in the arm with the needle. That seems reasonable. Use the McDonald's if you have to. Everyone loves a Happy Meal. But we're not evidently doing that just yet. Now I'm hopeful. Look, the NFL has said, come use our stadiums. Maybe Biden's going to do that. Lots of big airy spaces. Go out, get the shot. Move forward on that. But I'll tell you, I'm glad to see a president actually doing something. Doing something. Big, really important stuff. So happy on that front. And maybe we get through this before it mutates to the point where the vaccine is worthless. Now I'm told the variant that they see coming from the UK, which is going to evidently sweep the world, they seem to believe that the vaccine is still going to be good against that. So we'll see. Now, I've been saying for the longest time I want the Democrats to hammer on the Republicans over the rescue package. We should be hammering on every Republican who refused to vote to get money into people's pockets. But again, they've got their views, and I heard this Dave Ramsey, the money guy, talking about the stimulus checks. And my initial reaction was, let's see, A, B, C, D, E, F. The sixth letter. How far down is U? How long does it take to get to U? That was my first reaction. It was a big giant F, and then that further down the alphabet where the U is that. Because he said, I don't believe in stimulus checks. Because if $600 or $14 changes your life, you were pretty much screwed already. You've got other issues going on. And immediately my mind goes, back to the letters. And then I sat and I thought about it. A couple of things come to mind. First, this isn't about talking about changing people's lives. So the frame that they've taken right from the start, completely illogical. Nobody's saying that this is a life-changing event. We're saying we're going to help you get a couple of things that you need. Help pay your rent, help make sure that you can put food on the table, that your kids are taken care of. We're going to help you make it to the next month and maybe the next month. We're going to help you get by. We're going to prop up landlords. We're going to prop up the economy while we get through this. So this frame that, this somehow is going to, no, it's not changing anybody's life. It's helping them maintain. But the second part of this is that, the people who are struggling during this moment, and he's probably right. A lot of working people are screwed already because the economy is so badly rigged against working people that, you're struggling during this and you need the help. And this is one of those moments where most certainly we need government intervention. And I've been talking about for years the need for workers to have unions and to be able to join and form unions and have, big, powerful unions. I want big labor, so that we can negotiate for the massive wealth that our labor creates. I had someone say to me the other day, unions, they close businesses down. And I go, that's probably the most moronic statement I've ever heard anyone say. No union has ever said, boy, I'd really like to put this company out of business that they represent. None of them. Why? Because we want really wildly profitable companies. Again, why? Well, because we want to make more money. We want to be able to negotiate for higher wages, for better benefits, for better working conditions. We'd like more of what our wealth creates, please. And we need the bargaining power to do it. The sad reality is most workers don't have that bargaining power. Most workers are screwed already, as Dave Ramsey said. And I love the fact that Joe Biden is talking about giving them the tools to unscrew themselves. So in talking about moving on the PRO Act, I'm like, fabulous. It's what we need. And what do we see coming out of Tennessee, a right-to-work state? Or as I say, the no rights at work state? They want to put in their Constitution that workers, that they're in the Constitution, they're going to use the power of government against workers. Because understand what right-to-work laws are. It's an intrusion in a relationship between an employer and an employee. It's literally saying you cannot dictate what happens in the workplace, and you can't even agree to it. There's something seriously wrong, especially when the conservatives are the ones saying, get government out of our lives. So today, Sherrod Brown, senator from Ohio, along with Patty Murray from Washington, they have introduced the PRO Act. They're introducing the PRO Act. The goal is to restore, as Sherrod Brown says, to restore every worker's right to organize and collectively bargain. He says we're going to give power back to workers. And for me, the reality in this is, and it's something I've been talking about for a very long time, you want to solve our society's problems? You want to solve income inequality. You want to solve gender inequality. You want to solve LGBTQ inequality. You want to solve all of those problems. It starts at the workplace. It starts at having equality in income. It starts at having equality in wealth. It starts with having empowerment and a voice, not just on the job, but also in society. And that comes with having economic power. For way too long, the desperation class of workers in this country have had no economic power or voice. And the fact that this scares the hell out of the wealthy is a good thing. And for me, this is one of those moments where, thank goodness, we've got a president in Joe Biden who's willing to stand up and say, you know what? We're going to use the power of government to help and to encourage collective bargaining. Because for way too long, the working class of this country has been getting stiffed. And I point you to the Rand Corporation's study about 6-8 months ago that said for the last 45 years, about $2.5 trillion each and every year has been stolen from the working class of this country and redistributed upwards. What's that mean? We've built this giant wealth class, and the rest of us paid for it. So finally, someone's helping and moving in that direction. And over the next several weeks, we're going to be talking a lot about this because it's really, really important in my view. But got lots to get to, lots to talk about. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1981. That was the day at least 8 workers at the Sequoia 1 nuclear reactor in Tennessee were exposed to radioactive coolant. The reactor was part of the vast Tennessee Valley Authority that provided electrical power to the region. Sequoia 1 had just been commissioned and was already off to a bad start. First, on January 19, 1981, a generator tube malfunctioned, forcing a complete shutdown. Then, on this day, an operator's error triggered an emergency alert. An auxiliary unit operator was working his first day on the new job without proper training. He inadvertently opened the wrong valve during a safety test. The operator misunderstood his instructions and recognized his mistake immediately. But when he tried to alert the control room, they were too busy responding to the developing crisis to answer his call. Reactor water sprayed for 10 minutes before it was finally shut off. As many as 14 workers were contaminated by the coolant. Some scientists contend that the release of reactor vessel water was inadvertent and part of the design of the cooling system. Others argue that, in order to cut costs, management had decided to use radioactively contaminated water as emergency coolant rather than the more expensive, fresh, uncontaminated water. Steam leaks, tube malfunctions, and overflowing drainage tanks were just some of the reported failures at the plant in the following years. Between 1985 and 1988, Sequoia was forced to shut down again after an independent review concluded that the plant did not comply with current safety standards. Today, the plant supplies electricity to more than 1.3 million homes. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some early polling numbers on Joe Biden, and wow, his approval rating way up. 62% of folks polled approve of Joe Biden's handling thus far of the duties. And, you look back, you go, at this point in the presidency, Donald Trump was at 44%, Barack Obama was at 60%, George W. Bush was at 57%, and Bill Clinton was at 51%. I'm hoping that Biden continues to do the job that he's doing, and I think those numbers go up, and that is, I think, a good thing for us, especially if we get this rescue package done and we start moving on something like the PRO Act. I think we're going to be in a good place. Today, obviously, the end of the Democrats, the House Democrats impeachment part. Jamie Raskin ended the opening arguments with the quote, "Tyranny like hell is not easily conquered, but we have this saving consolation. The more difficult the struggle, the more glorious in the end will be our victory. Good luck in your deliberations." And as I said, there are only two reasons that the Republicans would vote to acquit Donald Trump, and that one of them is that they're a coward, and the other one is that they're complicit. Those are the two choices. It doesn't get any simpler for me. I'm here to share some thoughts on today's events. I've asked our good friend David Yankovich to come talk with us. David is one of my favorite digital strategists and political minds in the country. David, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, thanks for having me again.
So I'm going to start with that point. I think there's only two reasons that Republicans vote to acquit Donald Trump. They're either cowards or they were involved, especially when you look at the fact that at least half of them pushed the big lie that this election was stolen, and there were all these made-up irregularities.
Yeah, I mean, all we can do right now, honestly, as a country is, get their names on record and then knock them out in 2022. There's going to be 20 of them that are on the ticket, I think 20, that are running for re-election. You have Portman who's dipping out because, of reasons or whatever. But here's the thing, everybody, and for you too, Rick, and all of it, we have to stick to Donald Trump's crime. We have to stick to the issues. They want to distract us. Everything that's happening right now, all the noise, the circus, and all the dirt they're about to kick up tomorrow, it's all just a big distraction to stop from the fact that 10,000 Donald Trump supporters grievously injured 140 cops. One had his eye gouged out, cervical discs were broken. Their backbone. Terrible stuff. And obviously, we have one that was dead, and we had a couple of them that were stabbed by American flags. They want to distract from all these stories, and they're going to throw everything out there. And so, my hope for everybody who is, doing any type of organizing, any type of messaging out there is don't take the bait. We're going to take care of the senators after this is over. Don't take the bait of their votes and doing this now. They want you to be distracted away from the fact that Donald Trump committed a crime. You have to stay on message, and that's the message. Donald Trump is a clear and present danger to the future of the presidency.
And not just Donald Trump, I would argue that the next Donald Trump is a clear and present danger, because if we don't hold this is one of the arguments I thought that Raskin made and the managers made that I thought was most important. This is for the future. This is telling future presidents that you will be held accountable, that you don't get the lame duck time to commit all the crimes you want because you'll be out of office before we can hold you accountable. To me, that's the message. Not that we're worried about Donald Trump down the road and him running again. I don't care about that right now. I want to make sure that any president, anybody who's Donald Trump down the road, Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever party comes next, that they know that they can't commit crimes and get away with it.
Yep, and that's exactly it, 100% that. And that's the biggest part of the argument. Would you want a Democrat doing this? This isn't about partisan politics. This is about the future of our country. It's about the presidency. We came really, really, really close to losing our republic here. I don't think that people realize that a lot of the time. And so, what we're talking about here, this isn't politics. This isn't the Democrats trying to rub the Republicans' faces in a loss. This is that we never want to see January 6th happen ever again. We never want to see a president have corruption like he had ever again. He's committed crimes. This is a premeditated crime. They funded this. They planned this. He spoke for weeks and weeks and months about, invalidating the election. They even met before the event to discuss the event. And then when the event happened and all the violence was going on during it, he did nothing. He didn't respond. He didn't send in the National Guard. He did nothing on it. Even when his own vice president was literally feet away from, getting taken by the crowd, and we now know that, he still did nothing. And then afterwards, he did nothing about it either. And so it was premeditated. He took the action, and then he did nothing about the action. And that's everything we have to focus on. He committed that crime. He did that. And that was an attempted coup in the United States. And make no mistake, and I know that, the comparisons towards, the Holocaust and everything else are, usually, hyperbolic for people. But, when Hitler had his first coup, it was a massive failure, and everybody laughed at him. And then he did it 10 years later, and so something like this, we all kind of look at it, and, the Republicans are voting against it, and they don't think that it can happen. But, 10 years down the line, 15, 20, 50 years down the line, that's a precedent that they're setting, that there's no accountability. There's a January exception now that the president can get into the last 2 weeks in office and just commit every crime he wants to and then leave.
No, this
is about, this is bigger than just Donald Trump and the Democrats.
absolutely. And you go back, to my grandparents' generation, and I guess my parents' age generation, they pushed back against this with Nixon. When Richard Nixon came out and said, well, if the president does it, it's not illegal. They said, no, it is illegal. This is basically the same argument over again that they're trying to make. And this time they've got a media structure that said, hey, he didn't incite, he invited. Oh, it's completely different. Send out, gold lettered, calligraphed, invitations. This wasn't inciting. No. Our past generations fought back against this. They're hoping that we don't.
Well, that's exactly it. And, they're hoping that we're too stupid to understand what's going on.
Well, sadly, some of us are, David. I mean, I got to be honest. Some of the people that I'm interacting with, they're like, nothing. There was nothing new that the Democrats laid out.
Yep. And that comes down to a long-term messaging problem that we're working to correct right now. We have new chair in town. Who's got a 50-state strategy. There's a piece of this where, I wouldn't say that the people are stupid. The people have been getting fed propaganda and misinformation for 12 years straight, and there's been no response back. They've almost been victimized, either by a political party or by other nations to be in this situation. And I'm not talking about the Nazis and the white supremacists and things like that in the party, but I'm talking about the bankers, the people who are just going to their day-to-day lives that literally spend less than 2 minutes a week thinking about politics, rather than people like me and you who think about it 24/7. And so to get those voters back, first of all, Rick, what you're doing with the unions organizing there, but then better messaging structure and apparatuses. So we're going to be working on that in 2020 and 2020. 2021 and 2022 here. We have to build this thing out and do better. So. I don't think that there's stupid voters, although there probably are a lot of them. It's more that we just haven't reached, in years, some of these people. And so, we're gonna get into it. We're gonna go all over.
Yeah, we've had this conversation before. I don't think people are stupid. I think they're over misinformed. You go back to the Reagan frame. They know so much that isn't. And
yep.
and look, you've got Fox News, you've got Newsmax, you've got OAN, you've got all these people out there, just spreading these fantasy narratives. And they did this all into the run-up of January 6th. They were as complicit and as responsible. And I wish there would have been more time spent pursuing that. I know this was about Donald Trump, but it's also an indictment of the wealth class of this country who sponsored and funded and pushed for this stuff and made it possible for these groups to be able to get away with this stuff.
I totally agree, and I don't think that there's a statute of limitations on public opinion here. We have to do that too. That's like sleeping giants and organizations that are, chasing down this kind of stuff. We need to put the spotlight on them. But right now, we need to keep our effort on keeping, the story on Donald Trump and the cops that got hurt and killed, and really make this narrative there, because it's twofold. First of all, we have to ensure this never happens again. But second of all, we're going to have them running for re-election, and we want to have their names on the record, and we want to be able to have them, put their portrait on the wall of, being a traitor to their country.
No, you're absolutely right. And
run them out of office.
You're right. This is an election thing because, the stories that I've been seeing coming out of this during this trial, you got Josh Hawley with his feet up on the desk. You've got, senators just wandering all over the place, doodling on their notebooks. The story today that half, guys, like 15 or more of them were out in the hallway, just kind of hanging out. The fact that they don't even take their jobs seriously in what is, historically, probably the greatest attack on this country ever. And I don't say that lightly. Look, Pearl Harbor, 9/11, those were enormous attacks, but that came from the outside. This came from within. This, I think, is much more dangerous.
Oh, it's absolutely much. It was an attempted coup. And that's, we have to really be realistic about that. Like, this is a coup attempt by a president who lost an election to overturn the results and kill anybody in his path. That's what this is. That's what we're looking at. And I promise you this is, in going forward with the groups that we're building out and the teams that we're doing, we're going to make every single person who had anything to do with this, that was a part of it, that has ran and is putting their feet on the desk and all of this, we're going to make them wish that they never did this. We're going to run them out of office, and we're going to defeat them on every front. And that's that's really a promise. We're that engaged here. And then on the other part, with Donald Trump, we have to convict, and if they aren't going to convict, then their names forever will be etched in the history books as traitors to this country.
Yeah.
And also cop killers. And you can't be the party of law and order if you have 140,000 cops or 140 cops who have been major injuries and eyeballs gouged out and stabbed with American flags and killed, and say that you're still the party that protects the blue. Like, we're going to obliterate them over this. So, that's why I tell everybody, keep your powder dry when it comes to all the things you want to say on Twitter that piss you off right now. Just stay on message about Donald Trump in this, because in the coming weeks and months, we're going to town. We're gonna go after everybody who helped fund this. We're gonna go after the politicians who are behind it. We're in. And so, right now, this is just, let's go after Donald Trump, stay on message, and don't lose sight of the fact that they want you to be distracted.
So how do you do that in an era where, because there's the talk of unity, David. We need to come together as a country. We need to unify. We're hearing a lot from the people on the right on how, this is not the moment to, for this. We're a country that's torn apart. And you're not going to want to make things worse because the Republicans look at Democrats as enemies. We can't be like them, David.
Yep. So you quote tweet them and you say they want to distract you from the fact that Donald Trump has incited premeditated insurrection or, a coup against the United States. 140 cops were grievously injured. Had some of them that were killed. And you start listing out the people who were stabbed by American flags, and you say, this is a distraction. Don't be distracted by this. Keep the focus on it and just keep moving along. They want you to quote tweet them and say, this person's an asshole. I'm mad.
Thanks for that.
That's the first time I talked on their show. But they want you to, they want to troll you so that they can cause you to waste your time and get away from the message that you're trying to do. Their message is exactly what you're saying. We want to, come together and do this. Don't waste your time on that. They don't want to come together with you. And anybody who's saying that they want to come together with you, but they want to acquit Donald Trump, they're not into the unity game. So don't waste your time with it. Stay on message. Just stay on what you believe in and what you're fighting for, and don't let them pull you into the mud because, the oldest political expression that there is, when you fight a pig in the mud, you get dirty,
Yep.
And that's what this is. And I'm not saying go high when they go low. I'm saying that we're going to beat the living crap out of them soon. Stay on message.
No, I'm at the point right now where I've always believed that there's nobody I won't talk to. There's nobody there's nobody that I can't sit and have a conversation with. I got to be honest. This is one of those issues that this is a non-starter for me. If you support Trump after this, if you think he did nothing wrong, if you're Alan Dershowitz who says, "Oh no, he didn't incite, he invited," trying to be Johnny Cochran, I got no time for you. You're a 5. I got to move on. We've got too much work to do cleaning up the mess.
Yep, and that's the thing is, we have a president right now who is keeping his head down and cleaning up the mess. He just announced today that we have enough vaccinations to vaccinate every single American in this country. He did in 3 weeks what Donald Trump couldn't do in a year and 3 months. And so, I mean, we're moving. The world is starting to respect us again. We're back in, the World Health Organization. We're getting the truth out to people about COVID. We're moving it. I mean, he's unbelievable right now. It's almost like an FDR type of thing. It's almost like he's been planning to run for president since 1978, and was ready. But I mean, for real though, we have a president right now doing that, and so right now all the focus is on the old president and all the crimes he's had, and we need to hold him accountable, and that's truly it. We have to hold him accountable. But on the other side of this, we also have to go back to defending Joe Biden in his first 100 days, because what he gets done here is going to impact us for the next 100 years. It's really that important.
I agree with you, and a big part of this is the rescue package. People are going to need money to get through these next couple of months. And I'm glad to see, and I'll be honest, I was so worried that we would have an Obama 3.0, that you would spend, the next month, 2-3 months trying to negotiate with people who aren't going to come along. So I'm thrilled to see that they're moving forward, saying, look, we've extended the olive branch, but we're not going to let you grab it and beat the crap out of us with it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a little bit different too. Like we've seen all these playbooks now in modern politics. Like we've seen Mitch McConnell's playbook. We've seen the ways they're going to go. We know a little bit more about the way that they're going to, handle things. And so, you have a Biden administration coming in there after an Obama administration, and kind of seeing, with the way that they were treated. They're being realistic. And Biden is, probably, and you may disagree with me on this out there, or you, but Biden's one of the best politicians out there. He understands, how to make deals, but he also kind of knows when to be tough on this stuff. So I'm really proud of him right now. I didn't, when he first came into office and he got elected, I was hopeful, but actually seeing him operate, it's really amazing. It's just relaxing to know that there's an actual president.
Yep, and his approval ratings show that. As I've said from the beginning, he was my fourth choice during the primary, but he was the right choice. So the country, I think, chose the right person, and I'm thrilled to see how he's doing, and I hope he does much more. David, I appreciate the time, the thoughts. Last question: convict, not convict? What are you seeing?
Man, that's a tough one. I'm gonna say not convict is what they're gonna do. But
well, that's where the money's at.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. We don't know what's going to go down. I mean, Mitch McConnell has been kind of waffling publicly. Yeah. I don't have any faith in anything he says. But
I've got no faith in him whatsoever. I don't see a conviction. I think it's that simple. David, I appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much.
No, thank you, Rich.
Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1903. That was the day that workers in Oxnard, California, took a united stand and showed the power of solidarity. Oxnard was a California boom town. The American Beet Sugar Company, owned by the Oxnard brothers, drew hundreds of workers to the area. These new arrivals included Mexican and Chinese agricultural workers who faced hostility from local white residents. The managers at Oxnard exploited this interracial tension. They intentionally exacerbated conflicts between the groups of workers in an effort to keep wages low. This animosity heightened even further when the federal government passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, severely restricting Chinese immigration to the United States. As the number of Chinese workers at the factory fell, the company recruited Japanese workers to take their place. They wanted to continue to divide and exploit their workforce. They required their employees to shop at a company store. They also paid their recruits less than was originally promised. But the company had miscalculated. The workers were fed up with these tactics. 500 Japanese workers and 200 Mexican workers walked off the job. Soon the number of striking workers had grown to more than 1,000. One Mexican worker was killed during the work action, and 4 other strikers were injured. But the workers stood strong together. The company eventually caved to the demands of the workers. The victorious workers then applied for union affiliation with the American Federation of Labor. But the AFL refused to admit the new local because it included Japanese workers. It would take a few more decades before the lesson of solidarity charity taught in Oxnard, California, would begin to be embraced by the U.S. labor movement. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I got to tell you, I'm still a little miffed at this Dave Ramsey comment, and it's rare that something he says gets on my radar or gets under my skin. But the fact that he says, I don't believe in that $600 or $1,400 check. Don't believe in that already. It's not life-changing money, he says. Chances are you were already screwed to begin with. You got other issues. And I agree that, $1,400 is not life-changing money. It's to help you maintain and sustain. It's to help you get through this rough patch. But I also agree these folks are screwed, which is why, like I said, I'm thrilled to see Sherrod Brown has moved forward and moving on the PRO Act. And I'm certainly happy that Joe Biden is in the White House and here to share some thoughts on, well, not just Dave Ramsey's comments, but maybe a little bit of what happened today. I've asked our good friend Morris Pearl to come talk with us. Morris is the chairman of Patriotic Millionaires, a group of very wealthy people who say, you know what, maybe we should raise the minimum wage. Maybe we do need more equality in the economics world. Maybe just a little. Morris, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick. Great to be on your show.
So let's start with Dave Ramsey. It's not life-changing money. $1,400, that ain't life-changing money. And if you needed it, you're probably screwed anyway.
I'll tell you, it's not going to change my life one way or the other. But there's a lot of people out there who are short a few hours a week to make enough money on wages to pay their rent. And there's a lot of people for whom $1,400 can make a difference. Guys who make $30,000 a year, that's a lot of money.
No, and what it is, as I've been saying, look, if you're behind on your rent, it's going to help you stay in your house. If you're behind on your light bill, that's what it's for. It's a rescue plan. It's not we're going to change your life. I can change your life. We'll get you a union job, get you union benefits and retirement security. That's going to change your life. But a check right now is only going to help you put food on the table and keep your kids with a roof over their head.
And it's going to make a difference to the guy who you pay the rent to of getting another week's rent. It's going to make a difference to the guy from whom you're buying that food that goes on your table. It's going to make a difference to the person who you're paying to watch your kid while you're working. It's going to make a difference to a lot of people beyond that first person who gets it too.
Yeah. It's a lot better than nothing. Yeah, I'm very rarely outraged, but this really just ticked me off today. I guess it's that kind of a day because I watched all of the impeachment information today, and I'm as angry as I was yesterday and the day before. I'm curious, have you paid attention to Jamie Raskin and the House managers, their presentation? And if you have, what'd you think of it?
I think Jamie Raskin is great. I think Sarah Bloom Raskin is great too. I can't imagine losing a son under those kind of circumstances. But then getting back to work, putting the case in front of the American people. I think it's so clear that, whether you call it sedition or treason or inciting a riot or murdering a police officer. You can't let people get away with this. It's not right.
No, it's crazy. And I've said that I only see two possible answers for someone voting to acquit Donald Trump. One, you're a coward, or two, you're complicit. I don't see a third option.
Imagine what everybody would be saying if Hillary Clinton gave a speech and incited people to kill a police officer?
Oh my gosh.
There's a complete double standard here among, a lot of the population. And it's just ridiculous. I can't imagine. I had to walk out of the room where my wife was watching the impeachment hearing, the impeachment trial all day. The
videos that they laid out were some of the most vile videos I've seen. And there's the reality for me is I take solace in knowing that is going to be something that in 100 years, in 200 years, people are going to remember, and they're going to be able to see the people who did what they did, and hopefully we learn from this history and never allow it to happen again.
I've walked down those halls.
Yep.
And guys with carrying guns saying, "How may I help you, sir?" And I get nervous. I couldn't imagine. I mean, it's unimaginable that someone, I can't even, it's just unfathomable.
No, it's crazy, and look, I'm still going back to what I said. They're either cowards or they're complicit, especially when almost half of them perpetuated the big steal, the big lie. It's, to me, it's that simple. But I want to move on to the next phase, because clearly there's a lot of work that needs to be done. The Democrats, and to their credit, are moving forward to get this rescue package pushed through, even if they have to go through budget reconciliation. I'm curious your thoughts on the package itself. Do you think this is going to help? Do you think it's targeted properly? I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, it'll certainly help. I mean, is it targeted exactly properly? I don't know. I mean, I think you should give most of the money to the people who are least wealthy. Basically, if you give money to wealthy people like me, we get wealthier. If you give money to the guy who isn't sure how he's going to pay his rent check next month, he's going to use it to pay his rent. And then his landlord will have more money. And then whoever the landlord hires to take care of the building, they'll have more money. And that multiplies all through our economy. And that's what makes the economy grow, when you give people who actually have to work for a living more money. So I don't think wealthy people need more money at all.
Yeah, no, I said from the beginning, the corporations shouldn't get a dime. The very wealthy shouldn't get a dime. You give it to the people at the bottom, they're going to spend it, and it'll trickle upwards. It'll get to the corporations, it'll get to the wealthy, because you're going to provide the goods and the services and all the things that we need, and the jobs and all that stuff will come by people having income and having disposable money to spend on the things that they need in everyday life, like you said, paying the rent.
What drives me crazy is when these congressmen come in and they say, well, we want to help people maintain a connection with their employers and employees. And that's a code word for meaning we want to give all the money to the employers, so in hope that they'll give some of it to the employees too.
Yeah, it's crazy to me.
You have to give it to the people who need it the most, and they're going to spend it.
And a big part of that, and I'm curious your thoughts on the inclusion of a $15 an hour federal minimum wage, and closing the tipped wage loophole as well. The argument now, Morris, is we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're in economic chaos. We can't possibly afford this. It's terrible policy. We can't possibly afford it.
We can't afford not to. This is exactly the time that people need a raise in their wages. And plus, it's a minimum. It's a change in the minimum wage over the course of 4 years, not next week or next month or this year. Even Senator Sanders agreed to the amendment that we would not raise the minimum wage to $15 until after the pandemic is over. So it's going to be raised a little bit by bit over the course of several years. And secondly, yes, we can afford it, and we need to. If we tell one guy, oh, please raise your employees' wages by a lot, that's a problem for that guy. If we tell everybody they have to raise the wages at the same time, that means their customers are getting raises too. Talk to your local bar owner. Ask him if he's more concerned about how much beer money his customers have or about the wages of the one guy who's standing behind the bar pouring the beer.
That's an excellent point. But here's the thing, and this is where I know my conservative listeners are going, Morris, you're a rich guy. Pay him whatever you want. That's your job. That's your responsibility. What's the argument against that? Because, look, I know you're a decent guy. You pay your employees well. What's the argument against, leave it the way it is. And if you want to pay more, that's your choice.
Well, man, I mean, I don't actually employ anybody, so that's fine. But the argument is we want everybody to raise the wage at the same time. It's the point I was making that if you tell one employer, please raise the wages of your employees, that's money out the door. If we tell all employers to raise the wages at the same time, that means the customers have more money too. That means every business can sell more stuff because all the people have more money, not just the employees of the one employer.
Right.
So we have to do it for all people at the same time, including the people who are in jobs where they get tips also. Having a job that depends on tips is just ridiculous. And the people giving the tips think they're giving something extra. And really, it just goes to get them up to the minimum wage. So I think everybody should get a minimum wage, and it should go up to $15 an hour And if it has to take a few years, then it has to take a few years. But we have to go in that direction.
And then I argue it has to be, and this is not something that I've seen in the legislation. Maybe you know more than I do, but I don't see it being indexed to inflation down the road, is it?
Yes, well, it's indexed to median wages. So the idea is as not average wages, but median wages, which goes up more slowly than average wages. But yes, it will go up as the median wage goes up automatically after it reaches 15.
Okay, because we're here 12 years. We're here 12 years without an increase.
Yeah. And people have less buying power now than they did in the late 1960s.
Yeah, it's crazy. So how do you see this playing out? Because the reality is, I don't think this is going to pass with a single Republican vote. It didn't pass in the Senate just the other day at 5:30 in the morning with a single Republican vote. Do you think this is something Democrats are going to have to do through budget reconciliation?
Well, Senator Sanders says he thinks they can put it into the budget reconciliation. He knows better than I do. And yes, I'd like to see it pass. I'd like to see some Republicans vote for it. And if they won't, the Republicans never asked any Democrats what they thought when they wanted to pass something with 51 votes. And they've done it plenty of times over the course of the last 4 years. So, yeah, I think that's where we need to go.
Yeah, it's just one of these things where, I guess I'm still fixated on Dave Ramsey. And, this idea that, $1,400, that's not life-changing, and it's not. But also the frame that people are screwed. And the sad reality is in this country.
Well, he's right about that.
Absolutely.
A lot of people are screwed. And, yeah, the people who are really screwed will be really screwed again next month, whether or not they get $1,400 this month. But it's certainly going to be a lot better than nothing. And it's certainly going to multiply through the economy multiple times, every one of those checks. And it's certainly going to be a lot better than nothing. So, yeah, I would look at the half full part of the glass, sir, not the half empty part.
No, I'm with you. But the reason I'm bringing this up is the fact that, he's right on that part. There's been a massive redistribution of wealth in this country. In fact, as I point out, the Rand Corporation did a study that said for the last 45 years, about $2.5 trillion each and every year has been extracted from the working class and has risen upward. We've created the wealthiest billionaire class in the history of civilization through redistributive tax policies that have done what it's done. Now's the time to give people a little bargaining power. And maybe it's just that I'm simply looking at the cause and effect of the period when labor organizing was its strongest, the 1960s, when we had 35% of the workforce unionized, and we had one income supporting a family, and people able to go to college, and people able to take vacations and not have to work 2 and 3 jobs. Maybe I'm idealizing that period, but it would sure be nice to have that problem of 35% union density at this moment.
Yeah. Frankly, that's when America was great, when it had unions. Of course, it also had a problem with people of color being part of those unions too. But I think we can go back to more people being represented by unions, and a lot of people will be a lot better off. Capital in Maine is doing a whole series about that study you mentioned with the Rand, about how the median wage would be, instead of 50,000, would be 100,000 if wages had just kept up with productivity over that time. But we've been shifting towards more of profits, more of revenue going to capital, investors, owners, and less to labor over the past decades, most of my lifetime. I'm wealthier now. I've not worked in 6 years. I'm wealthier now than I was before the pandemic started, just because all the corporations I own stock in are doing so well. And it's getting ridiculous.
So the other person would ask, Morris, since you are doing so well, you won. Why do you want things to change? You've won.
Well, no, things are changing. Things are changing. Things are not the way they were when I was young. Back then, anybody who worked hard could succeed. Now, people who want to succeed have to pile up so much student debt, have to work 2 or 3 jobs. They have to do so much, they can't make it happen anymore. The only people really succeeding are the children of rich people. I want my granddaughter and her generation to have the kind of opportunities I had when I was growing up. I want the state, our government, to pay for people's education the way they did then, and not have to send people to private colleges or have them indebted for their entire lives with student loans.
Yeah.
So I want things to be back the way they were when I was younger, so that the next generation, the one after that, can have the kind of opportunities that I had.
Yeah, but when
That's
you
what
were
I'm looking
younger,
for.
Morris, and you're a couple years older than I am, but when you were younger, the top marginal tax rate on people like you was 70%. And a little bit
Yes.
older than you, it was 92%.
Yeah, Ken Langone, the guy who helped start Home Depot, is now going around a bus tour talking about how we need lower taxes so people can start businesses. He started that business when he was paying a 70% tax rate, and he lived in New York the whole time and never thought about moving. And yeah, that's the kind of thing we need to go back to. People did fine paying higher taxes. It's a lot better to make a lot of money and pay taxes on it than to not pay any taxes at all because you don't make any money.
That's an excellent point. So, you brought up the student loan thing. Do you think Joe Biden's going to move on some debt forgiveness?
I think so. I think they're going to have something. It just makes me sick the way even some of the Democrats. I met in person with one of the Democratic senators who said, well, everyone gets so angry if all of my constituents who paid off their student loans and worked hard will be so angry if these other guys get a free ride. Saying, are you out of your mind? And just, it's so ridiculous. We have to help the people who need the most help, and not worry that, the people who don't need help will feel bad because other people are getting more help than they are.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when we became that society. I don't remember it as a kid where I looked at you and I was jealous of what you had and said you shouldn't have it. I remember going, hey, you've done well for yourself. I want to do well too. How do I do what you've done? Instead of, no, screw you, we're going to tear you down. It's bizarre to me.
It's okay for you to be upset about the billionaires who are getting rich, but there's no reason for you to be upset at the poor people who are getting some help paying off their student loans.
Yeah.
Those are the people you don't need to be upset at, Rick.
No, I'm with you. Last question I've got for you. Obviously, I'm hoping middle of March for this rescue package. Is this what you're seeing the timeline to be? Sometime middle of March?
Yeah, they want to go to middle. They want to have it done before then because that's when the unemployment insurance runs out.
Right.
So yeah, I think they're planning in the next couple of weeks.
I hope this gets done and quickly. But Morris, I appreciate the time and the work that you guys do over at the Patriotic Millionaires. If folks want to check out the work, patrioticmillionaires.org is the website. Morris Pearl, I appreciate the time, my friend.
Anytime, Rick. Thank you.
Good stuff as always. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. Where working people come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. Did you work a 40-hour work week this week? If you did, this is an important day for you. On this day in labor history, the year was 1926. And on this day, labor leader Benjamin Gold began what became a general strike of all furriers in New York City. Benjamin Gold was born in Russia and immigrated with his family to the United States when he was 12 years old. He worked at several jobs before entering work in the fur industry. He became active in the Furrier Union at only 14 years old. In 1926, Gold helped lead some 12,000 workers, including Jewish, Greek, and African American furriers, on strike. One of their core demands was a 40-hour work week. Despite numerous acts of police brutality against the workers, constant red baiting, and dwindling strike funds, the workers held strong. Ben Gold helped raise money for the strikers, visiting other union halls throughout the city to sell 40-hour Liberty bonds. He helped get the New York State Federation of Labor and other unions in the city to support the cause. He argued that the 40-hour work week was important for all workers in New York and across the nation. With this support, Gold organized a rally at Madison Square Garden. The labor supporters filled the garden, making it the largest labor meeting in New York up to that time. After 17 long weeks, the furriers were successful, winning their first contract that recognized a 40-hour, 5-day work week. They also want a 25% pay increase, union inspection of shops, an employer contribution to an unemployment insurance fund, a paid day off, and equal assignments of work without favoritism. These brave workers help to set the standard for the work week of today. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
What is it about billionaires and multimillionaires that make them both self-entitled and clueless about the impacts of their greed? Even when they occasionally make a stab at doing something right, they tend to get it all wrong. For example, while major corporations rushed out PR campaigns at the start of today's devastating pandemic, loudly proclaiming all-in-this-together solidarity with their workers, most have quietly and quickly resumed their pre-pandemic policy of widely separating their rich fortunes from the well-being of their workforce. Take supermarket giant Kroger. Last March, as the pandemic spread across America, Kroger honchos publicly hailed grocery workers for staying on the job, despite the health hazard. They ran national TV ads announcing a $2 pay hike for employees, calling it a hero's bonus. But only 6 weeks later, the honchos killed the bonus pay, even as the virus spread. Well, you might think the economy was collapsing, so maybe the bosses had to scrimp. Hardly. Grocery sales and profits have boomed in the pandemic, and, as the investigative newsletter Popular Information now reports, Kroger's profits have zoomed up by $1.2 billion since the disease surged last year. Where did that bonanza go? To Fat Cat executives and shareholders. Last September, Kroger spent $1 billion on a stock buyback program, a corporate manipulation scheme that artificially jacks up stock prices, thus enriching the already rich handful of investors and executives who own most of the stock. One example, Kroger CEO Rodney McMullen's latest annual paycheck was $21,129,648. This is Jim Hightower saying, and yet those on top of America's financial heap wonder why working families spell boss backwards. Double S-O-B.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said before, I think there's only two explanations for a Republican senator right now to vote to acquit after seeing all of the evidence that was laid out, all of the videos. And look, I'll be the first to say there was really nothing new in what the House Democrats laid out. It's all stuff that was on Parler. It's all videos that we've talked about before. Maybe the fact that Romney was as close to being grabbed as he was, that was a little bit, that could have gotten really hairy. But for me, the answer is there's only two reasons. One, they're cowards, or two, they were complicit. It doesn't get any simpler than that. And they're going to show us. There may be one or two more, but there's no chance, in my view, that he is convicted. And here to share some thoughts on the impeachment trial and whether, the cowards or those who are complicit will actually vote to acquit or convict. I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. Sarah is a fantastic reporter over at Raw Story. She does incredible work. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, happy Thursday.
So what do you think? Cowards or complicit? Or both?
I was going to say both, because we know that there were reports of people within the Capitol that were talking to some of the rioters, the attackers. And so I'm very curious to know what the FBI has found about that. I do think, I know that you said that there was nothing new in this. One thing that was new to me, you mentioned Romney, all of that closed circuit TV footage was new. And I know it's nothing new to the story about it, but I think showing that footage was really surprising because it showed, just a different perspective. The thing about Mike Pence being, 60 feet away from being attacked. I saw the picture of him from the CCTV footage that had the guy with the nuclear football following behind him. And somebody on Twitter made some comment like, we were 60 steps away from the nuclear football being in some bar and grill out in Tennessee somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's a horrifying prospect. And then I think too, the body camera video, the watching the staffers flee really hit me, because I know what it's like to be that staffer. And then seeing that body camera footage of this guy just getting beaten. I mean, that's when I started crying, because I can't watch that stuff. That's so horrific. And you feel that guy's pain and fear. And I think that's the whole thing that I feel like the impeachment managers really tried to convey, is how terrifying it was. And the object of terrorism is to promote terror.
Right.
And so that seems like this is exactly what it is, and why it's so important that we be prosecuting it and that Trump be convicted.
No, I'm right there with you. That video, you're right. I guess that is new, but my mind had already gone there.
Yeah.
My mind was already that this was horrific, that these people were doing horrible things. And look, they videotaped what they were doing. I was waiting for the closed circuit camera stuff. But I guess the one thing, like I said, that surprised me is just how close they were. And then the questions in my mind started going, well, what would have happened had they grabbed Mitt Romney? What would have happened had they grabbed some senator that they didn't even know, or some House member that they Republican, Democrat, didn't matter? What would have happened to those people? And
I think they would have killed Mitt Romney. I really do. Because already he voted for impeachment last time around, and so he's really considered a traitor to them. And I assume that they hate him enough that some of these idiots who were, had the zip ties and had their weapons and had tasers and stuff, I would not be surprised if that's what their intentions were. They were looking for people to either kidnap or execute or something. And if it was Mitt Romney, I mean, he would be the one Republican that I can see them going after. And it's just horrifying. Like, I don't like Mitt Romney, but I don't want him to be killed. Like, what the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah. No, I said that
Same
from the
with
beginning.
Mike Pence, right?
Yeah, not even Mike Pence.
People. Oh my God, that's just so horrifying. And I hate Mike Pence, and I hate everything that he stands for. And the dude is afraid for his life still to this day. He's still scared. I mean, holy crap. Right? Like, I really feel for him. That's terrifying.
So, but isn't this moment then? Because I guess there's two directions you take in a moment of fear. You cower or you lash out. I mean, it's that fight or flight thing. Where are the statesmen? Where are the patriots that the Republicans tell us that they are, to step forward and say, this is wrong, it's never going to happen again, and we're going to crack down on the people who did it, starting with Donald Trump, who did call for this. He did incite this. The heck with Alan Dershowitz, and no, he didn't incite them. He invited them. Like, they're coming to a cocktail party.
There are no statesmen left. I mean, honest to God. And honest, when I think about Mitt Romney, I'm like, why are you there? Like, if you're there as a Republican member and all of these Republican Trump supporters were looking to kill you, why are you in this party? Like, I get that you're not a Democrat, but go be an independent, man. Like, you can still caucus with them, but why are you there? Like, what is the point of that? And I don't think, I for a long time, I thought that there were still, statesmen left, that there were still a couple of them that would uphold this kind of thing. And it's just, there's not. There really isn't. So many of them have been either kicked out, lost in primaries, become, gotten on the wrong side of a Trump tweet, and their careers were eaten. And, this is the result of it, is 45 Republicans who are going to vote to not guilty for a man who very clearly is guilty.
Do you see anyone coming over? One or two more coming along? There's some talk that there might be. And do you see that if McConnell, I know he's not going, I know this is purely playing with the media, but if McConnell were to vote for conviction, do you think the others would come along?
I don't know. I think that there are very few of them that would. I think the ones that are the most likely are ones that are going to retire because they have nothing else to fear.
Pat Toomey.
And when I think about McConnell, I mean, the thing about McConnell is he's already lost his power thanks to Donald Trump. He's really lost, everything because of Donald Trump. And I think this is probably his last term.
Well, yeah, he's like 4,000 years old.
Yeah, like either the Horcrux is going to eat him, or, or he's gonna go to greener pastures and,
or literally greener pastures.
Super PAC in the or the big super PAC in the sky. I never seen McConnell as that kind of person. He doesn't seem principled in any way whatsoever.
That's an excellent point. No, I find it interesting, though. You think he's going to go to the super PAC in the sky, though. That you're very optimistic for him.
Well, I said the super PAC. That's not heaven.
But so let me ask you this, because Lindsey Graham came out and said that he's angry at the Capitol Police because the Capitol Police didn't do their job. It's his view that they should have used deadly force, that they should have shot more people. You had Lauren Boebert, the gun fetish girl from Colorado, saying that if she had her Glock, she'd have been happy to pull the trigger, even though she was one of the ones inciting them by today's 1776.
Yeah.
Do you find it interesting that these people are talking out of both sides of their let's go with mouths?
And Lindsey Graham in particular, that's the weird thing, is that he made these comments and then he turned around and went on Sean Hannity and just said really crappy things about how this impeachment is all just complete a total joke, and none of it is justified, and you're just like, well, but like less than an hour ago you literally went from saying one thing to a whole bunch of people to Fox News' Sean Hannity, where you said something totally different. And this is the thing about Lindsey Graham, is he is just waving like a big old pink flag in the breeze. And you're just like, why? Either become a better liar, or stop, because we all know that you're full of it.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You had Donald Trump as president. I don't know that you can become a better liar.
That is true. That's very true. But Lindsey Graham is just bad at it. He's really terrible at it. I had this weird thought last night where I was like, I wonder if Joe Biden could call him into the office, and just be like, Lindsey, what happened to you? Show me on the doll where Trump touched you. Just like figure out what happened, what is going on. And I mean, obviously not publicize it, but, find out, like, are you compromised? Like, is something going on that we need to be worried about? Because as a president, I could protect you, like for real, and not, try and manipulate you.
Yeah, was it you in the video on the bed and the pee in Moscow? Was that you in the pee tape and not Trump?
Right, exactly. Because I think just like Lindsey Graham does not make sense to me.
Yeah.
And it may just be that he's old and maybe he's losing his mind. Who knows? Maybe
he just has no soul, and there's nothing there other than whichever behind he sticks his nose in.
That's totally possible. That's very Washington.
It's crazy. Now, the weird thing to me is, it all comes down to money, no matter what. And I now see that the RNC is actually raising money off of the impeachment. Do you find it funny that Trump and the lawyers aren't getting any of the RNC, hoarding it for themselves?
That is my favorite story of the week, is because this is exactly what Trump did. Whenever there was a runoff in Georgia, Donald Trump had all of these emails, these text messages, all of these solicitations going out saying, oh my gosh, we have to win Georgia. You have to donate. And the dude raised like over $200 million, and none of it went to Georgia. And now this is kind of that thing again where it's just like, well, the RNC is going to be like, we're going to fundraise off of Donald Trump's impeachment, and you're not getting any.
Yeah, but it's not like he's going to actually pay his lawyers anything. Not that they deserve it, because to be honest, I think Rudy Giuliani and Cindy Powell would have done a better job.
I mean, at the very least, Rudy Giuliani would have distracted by doing something stupid or melting before us or God knows what. And
leaking. He's so full of it, he was leaking. And yes, that was brown stuff coming out of him. He was that full of you know what.
If you're full of blank, you can't acquit.
I love that.
I've been making up all kinds of little rhymes.
Thanks to Alan Dershowitz. I mean, for me, it was all Dershowitz. When he came out with the incite and invite thing, I'm going, he's going back to OJ. He was hanging around with Johnny during the OJ trial, and he's summoning the ghost of Johnny Cochran, only doing a really bad job of it.
He is doing a very bad job of it. And so, I mean, they were so terrible. And I love the stories about Trump just being furious. And there was a New York Times story saying that he was an 8 on a Trump level 10 of anger. And it's just like, dude, when you can't pay your lawyers or, won't, it's really unclear if it's a can't or won't situation here. I mean, obviously he's living for free at Mar-a-Lago, so maybe he doesn't have any money. But this idea that he's not paying his lawyers, that really kind of limits your options there. Like, there are a lot of lawyers out there who will work for anybody and who can deal with a lot of terrible clients. But if you're not going to pay them, they're not showing up.
Yeah, well, again, it then comes back down to it comes down to the money, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's all about the Benjamins.
It's all about the Benjamins. And again, this is where I come back to why these people, their souls are sold. It's already bought and paid for. There's no soul there. They're not going to be the statesmen that we need to step forward in this moment. And I said from the beginning, back on Inauguration Day in 2017, I said the only people who are going to save this country are going to be the Republicans who turn against Trump and hold him accountable. And I was right, but I'm wrong, because I actually thought there was still some soul left in the Republican Party. There's not.
I was surprised about Bill Cassidy. That one threw me for a loop. I thought for certain that he was like playing a joke or something when they asked him whenever he voted. I was like, did he know what he was voting for? Could somebody check his temperature? Does he have the Rona? Like, what's going on? And then he stood up and talked to media people in the halls and was like, they made a better argument. Like, what just happened? Did I miss something? Did someone die? I don't understand. And he, it's how funny is it that our standards are so low that one random dude in the Senate was like, well, I thought they made a better argument. And we're just like, oh, like the skies parted, the sun shone down. And it's just like, what? That's a miracle. It's, oh my gosh, Jesus is back. But, that's how bad things are, is that our standards are Bill Cassidy.
No, it's crazy. And, some of the stories that we've seen coming out, I mean, did a senator actually do his toenails?
No, not really. Well, he had his feet up on the chairs, and so Michael Steele was making fun of him, or he was just like, I don't know what he was doing, like reading something or doing his toenails, who knows. But I wouldn't be surprised if Ted Cruz was chewing his toenails in the Senate when it was going on too. So
you mean he was chewing Josh Hawley's toenails?
Maybe.
See, now you got a use for Ted Cruz. I had no other use for him. Now he's useful.
I've always read in some of the mythology books that the fingernails and toenails of demons grow really, really fast. So maybe that's what it is.
There it is, and maybe by Ted Cruz. I'm not taking that any further because I'm being satirical. This is not what happened. I'm not saying it happened. I'm also not saying it didn't happen because I can't confirm or deny. But as far as I know, it didn't happen.
One of the things, though, about that is I don't understand why we can't see what's going on, what these guys, and maybe it's not that, obviously C-SPAN doesn't have control of the TVs or the cameras. Congress does, but why can't we have a photographer in the balcony taking pictures? Because I think we deserve to see what these idiots are doing and not doing. Chuck Grassley, trying to read an iPad and conceal it in his desk, stuff like that is it's irresponsible and it's childish, and I expect better.
Yeah, and to be honest, because they've done this in some state legislatures. To be in all actuality, that they've looked at what senators are doing. They're playing free cell or solitaire or some game on their computer. They're nowhere near engaged, and I see the Republicans being that way. They're nowhere near. I don't know that there's one of them that's been engaged.
Well, clearly Bill Cassidy was paying attention. But yeah, I don't trust the rest of them. Maybe some of the mods, Romney and McCloskey, and obviously Romney was paying attention because when he found out about the thing, he didn't know that Goodman. He didn't know any of that stuff. That Goodman was the one that. No, he had no idea. He didn't know, when Goodman told him no, go this way. He didn't know the reason that Goodman was telling him that. He didn't even notice that it was Goodman who told him that. He was just trying to figure out where to go in the hallway. And so the story that I heard is that once the proceedings ended, Romney talked to the press for a minute, and they asked him a bunch of questions about it. And then he went to actually look for Goodman to thank him in person, which, it's wow, that kind of decency is still left somewhere.
Yeah, well,
Congress.
I'm not a Romney fan, but you're right. But the thing is the fact that I find that I'm struggling with that because he turned and he hightailed it out of there.
Yeah, and I can imagine just watching that was so horrifying and terrifying. I can't imagine being there, just being so afraid, and the noise and the sound of people, because those ceilings are really high, and there's no carpet to absorb sound. And so it's just, you can hear people walking everywhere. You can hear people yelling. You can hear them talking from all over the place. And it had to have been really destabilizing. Sure, probably physically, but emotionally as well.
No, it's something that, you would think would stick with you and you would want someone to pay for.
You would think so. And I think that's sort of the difference in my mind of members of Congress and the Senate. I don't know where they sent members of Congress, where they hid them, and how they stashed them, because it seemed really different from the experience that members of Congress got. People in the House were in the gallery. People were, inches from these people, the attackers. It seemed more dire than what happened in the Senate. And maybe that's what it's about. They just didn't really experience it the way that House members did.
Maybe March 4th.
Oh God, don't even.
No, this is the undercurrent that I'm hearing is there's another there's another planned operation March 4th, because that's where they believe we should be inaugurating a president. This is when Donald Trump, like a phoenix, is going to rise from the fire, like the god that he is, and he's going to reclaim and then punish the heathens and the rest of us. Kind of like that whole rapture thing.
That's so interesting. I never thought about it with respect to the rapture, but
well, they do love their fairy tales.
They do, and this seems very apocalyptic. This seems very what's that book series? The Left
Behind. All those Left Behind people. Yeah. No, it's crazy, but it's the most popular selling series in the history of books, even more popular than the Nancy Drew books.
That is tragic. Nancy Drew is badass.
Tragic isn't even the right word for it. And finally, wanted to get your thoughts on Evidently, Trump's Twitter ban is permanent, and they've banned temporarily, I guess, or for the time. Devin Nunes's congressional Twitter account that was suspended for a bit, but his cow's Twitter account was perfectly fine.
Yes, and so people went through. This is his official congressional account, which technically are not supposed to be able to be banned, but apparently Nunes was tweeting all kinds of weird stuff that people complained about, and Twitter said this is against our terms of service, and they suspended him. And to get back into it, I guess he had to delete all of the tweets that they took issue with, and it deleted every single tweet up until last summer.
Just delete everything and we'll be okay with it. Just never say another word and we'll be okay with it.
And it was the official account. That's what's killing me, is it wasn't even a stupid ass campaign account. But I mean, really, not only has the cow, Devin Cow has more followers now, but Devin Cow outlasted Nunes's Twitter account, and for about 30 minutes there, the internet was a really joyous place, and there were lots of good puns and jokes. And then he came back, and it was like, oh man,
it's almost like what social media was aspiring to be. A place of fun and jokes and community. And then they let Devin Nunes back.
And then he let him back. Yeah, I have noticed that Twitter seems different.
Yeah, without Trump, I mean, things seem much different.
Yeah, the country is a better place. The Twitter is a better place,
Well, we'll see what happens. I understand Donald Trump's on Gab, so that might be the new right-wing crazy platform. I signed up for Gab, and I immediately was given I was following three people, the CEO, the company, and Donald Trump. You figure that one out, because I can't.
Oh, man, that's brutal.
There you go. Sarah, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the work that you do, and all the folks over at Raw Story. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You as well, our good friend Sarah Burris. Make sure you check out her work, rawstory.com, the website. We'll get links out so people can take a look at it. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
America must lead in the face of this existential threat. And just as with the pandemic, it requires global cooperation.
President Biden puts climate change at the center of U.S. national security and foreign policy. Pollution from fossil fuels causes 1 in 5 premature deaths globally, new study finds. Plus,
this isn't good for anybody who had issues with their respiratory system or especially the wildlife.
Another oil pipeline spill, this time in San Francisco Bay.
All of those messes and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
The United States will now rejoin the Paris Climate Accord and the World Health Organization. The three things his predecessor hated most: the world, health, and organization.
This is your Green News Report.
Baby, we're sorry. We're just going through some stuff. Please take us back.
Okay, Desi Doyen, just when the world is trying to get rid of oil, another reminder as to just one of the reasons why we need to do so as soon as possible.
Yep, there's another oil spill, this time in San Francisco Bay. Crews are now working to clean up an estimated 600 gallons of crude that spilled from a pipeline at the Chevron oil refinery in the Bay Area town of Richmond.
Man.
The spill prompted a health alert for residents to close their windows and doors to avoid breathing the fumes.
There has been nothing but problems with that Chevron plant in Richmond catching fire, leaking pipelines. Anyway.
Yep. In Washington this week, President Joe Biden continued expanding his whole-of-government approach to climate change. He spoke to staff at the Pentagon for the first time as commander-in-chief, thanking them for their service and sacrifices to the nation after the tumultuous Trump administration and laying out his national security agenda. Biden emphasized their mission now includes combating climate change.
There's no aspect of our agenda, the 21st century leadership, where the women and men of the Defense Department do not have a role, whether it's helping curb the pandemic here at home and around the world, or addressing the real threats of climate change that already costing us billions in impacts on our bases and our national security, or being part of an ongoing fight for racial justice.
Biden gave similar instructions to State Department personnel last week as he pledged to repair alliances, restore climate diplomacy to U.S. foreign policy, and, quote, earn back America's international leadership position.
Good luck with that.
We're taking steps led by the example of integrating climate objectives across all of our diplomacy and raising the ambition of our climate targets. That way we can challenge other nations, other major emitters, to up the ante on their own commitments.
I guess they're curbing emissions at the State Department by not using microphones.
He continued,
America must lead in the face of this existential threat.
And American leadership is probably going to be necessary because we already knew that the pledges countries made to reduce emissions under the UN Paris Climate Agreement are woefully inadequate to keep global temperatures in check. And we already knew countries are already failing to meet even those modest targets. Now, new research from the University of Washington calculates that world governments must nearly double the rate of their greenhouse gas cutting efforts over the next decade to avoid the most catastrophic effects of climate change. Meanwhile, new research from Harvard University has found that pollution from fossil fuels causes 1 in 5 premature deaths globally, suggesting that the health impacts of burning coal, oil, and natural gas are far higher than previously thought. In the most comprehensive examination of microscopic soot pollution data yet, the researchers estimated that exposure to pollution from power plants, vehicles, and industry accounts for about 18% of all deaths globally in 2018.
Really?
The impacts are not distributed equally. In the U.S. and Europe, fossil fuel pollution was linked to 1 in 10 premature deaths. In Asia, pollution caused nearly a third of deaths. The scientists conclude that ending fossil fuel pollution would increase global average life expectancy by more than a year and save nearly $3 trillion in global economic and public health costs every single year.
Wow. Of course, it will also increase population, which will increase emissions, but that's a story for another Green News Report.
Finally, some good news. The Biden administration is restarting the permitting process for the nation's first major offshore wind farm, reversing a Trump administration decision that canceled the process late last year. And a new report finds that the U.S. wind industry had its strongest year ever in 2020, nearly doubling new installations over 2019 for a new record high. The U.S. now has more than 60,000 wind turbines across 41 states, generating clean electricity for 38 million U.S. homes.
Wow, cool. And that's without even trying that hard. Imagine what we could do if we actually tried. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Don't forget you can download our reports anytime via Stitcher, TuneIn, Apple, or Google Podcasts. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I see in Tennessee that the anti-worker crowd, the no rights at work crowd, are hard at work trying to add their no rights at work agenda to the state's constitution, so that if it's possible that, as Sherrod Brown has introduced this PRO Act, that we do away with this idiotic right to work nonsense, that Tennessee will make sure that that is fully inculcated in their constitution so that they too can then continue to allow employers to screw over their workers in their constitution as a matter of constitutional bounds. Oh, Tennessee. Seriously. Now we're in this weird moment, and this is what I've been talking about for a while. I think Joe Biden is a guy who's going to help workers in a number of ways, and part of it is using government to ensure that working people have an equal footing, encourage people to join, form unions, collectively bargain. And look, we've got a couple of examples of a government actually helping workers. Worked really well. Now, we've got tons of examples of the government working against workers, not so well. And here to share some thoughts on, well, maybe a little bit of both, I've asked our good friend Erik Loomis to come talk with us. Erik's a professor, historian, blogger over at Lawyers, Guns, and Money, and has written the book on strikes, A History of America in 10 Strikes, which I highly, highly suggest. Erik, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, I'm always happy to be here.
So I'm looking at this moment, Tennessee going, no, you're not going to be able to pass that PRO Act and get rid of that right to work because we love screwing our workers out of wages. We're going to put it in our Constitution. We'll show you.
Yeah, well, it would be meaningless if the PRO Act passed because they don't, this federal government would be the law of the land. Tennessee tried to say states were more important than the federal government when it committed treason in defense of slavery during the Civil War. Civil War pretty much showed that the federal government rules and state governments don't. But so they're trying to make these anti-worker points, and Tennessee is a state that's controlled by extremists, and it's moved that way significantly since I lived there 20 years ago. It's a sign of what we have to face. I think that the PRO Act has a lot of potential, and I think that the fact that it's already passed the House and has at least a shot of passing the Senate is significant, and I think is going to show states like Tennessee that this era of extremism may be coming to an end.
No, that to me that's music to my ears, and I'll be honest, I've been happy with Joe Biden, happier than I've been with any president in our lifetime. Because in my view, he's done more for labor on day one than Obama, Clinton, and Carter, and well, obviously Reagan, Bush, and Trump on day one by firing Peter Robb, which to me was great to see him and his number two go. But it was also symbolic in that Robb was part of firing the Patco workers and the people behind that. So not only did we get somebody who was really toxic out of the NLRB, I think this is a symbolic moment as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, look, Joe Biden is never been and never really will be the kind of ideological leader on labor or anything else that some people wanted him to be. And that's not who the guy is. He is a centrist within the party itself, not a centrist overall, but a centrist within the party. And all the activism that's taken place in the last 10 to 15 years to move the party left is becoming increasing. The effectiveness of that is becoming increasingly obvious with every day that Biden is in office, right? As you point out, not only, Carter and Clinton were terrible for organized labor. And Obama, eventually in the second term, it got better. But when he started out, the Department of Labor was a complete, backwater. He was not interested in pushing pro-labor policies. It just wasn't a priority for him in the way that Biden has shown it to be a priority, because Biden understands where his voters are, and where they are is wanting to demand economic justice and worker rights. And so getting rid of Robb, obviously the Secretary of Labor, Eugene Scalia, son of the horrifyingly evil Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, and replacing him with Marty Walsh, who's a solid labor guy, is another sign of how Biden is taking concerns of organized labor seriously. The move to try to get a $15 minimum wage, support of the PRO Act. Look, it's a struggle to get positive labor laws passed under the United States government because of the structure of our government. But you sure as heck can't do it if you don't have a president who's going to put some muscle behind it. And it sure seems that Joe Biden is putting some muscle behind it. And I think, we'll see in the next year or two, but there are reasons to be optimistic about this in a way that has not existed in a very, very long time.
Right. And I go back to the history, and obviously your book, A History of America in 10 Strikes being, center in this. And you had a thread out the other day on Cripple Creek, which is an example of where government actually stepped in and helped a little bit. And it worked out fairly well. It wasn't like some of the other ones where, it didn't work out well, like, Blair Mountain, where they were literally dropping bombs on striking miners. To me, that's kind of the message that we need to be telling people, that having a government that encourages collective bargaining, encourages some equal treatment, is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing I really stressed in my book, because this is just the way that I read the history, is that unions really, or in this country, it's very difficult for unions to succeed if they can't neutralize the alliance between corporations and the government, which has existed for most of our history. And the strike I talked about the other day, you mentioned in Cripple Creek, all the way back in 1894, was the very rare example of a strike in the late 19th century winning. And the reason is because workers had elected a pro-labor governor of Colorado. It wasn't that they had special organizing powers or they were more militant than these other strikes that lost. They weren't. I mean, they were good unionists, but they had elected a guy in Colorado. The reason that the Flint sit-down strike succeeds in 1937 and the United Auto Workers gets established is not, which the anniversary of which was today, it should be said, of that victory, is that the not only had workers elected Franklin Delano Roosevelt as president, but they had elected Frank Murphy, the governor of Michigan, a pro-labor governor who stated in his campaign that he would never do anything to bust a strike. And we see this today too, right? And this is really critical, because I think that a lot of people, labor people, they do one or two things. Either A, they say, oh, Democrats are a bunch of sellouts, and we're not going to vote, or worker militancy is what matters. Or B, they say, well, I might like my union, but I'm going to vote Republican because of racial reasons or abortion or whatever. But either way, all you're doing by not voting for a party that's more pro-worker than the other major party is undermining your own union and your own rights as workers. And I think that the history is just overwhelming on this point, in terms of, at least in terms of the United States.
Now, some will point back to the Eisenhower era, because Eisenhower in their platform, the Republicans talked about talked about collective bargaining, talked about raising the minimum wage. They weren't horribly anti-union, not like they are today. Or is that revisionist history?
No, the difference is, I mean, they're not pro-union. And in fact, the Eisenhower administration, for instance, intentionally undermines the meatpacking unions in Chicago in order to lower meat prices for consumers, which creates the kind of meatpacking situation we see today in these places out in Kansas and Iowa, and these rural places with mostly undocumented or workers without a lot of power, with high rates of COVID. It's not that the Eisenhower administration loved workers. It's that worker power was so real at that point that the Republican Party, which never liked unions and never liked workers at all, had to say those things, because workers had real power. And if a certain percentage of workers was not going to support the Republicans, and by this we're talking about union members, we're not going to support Republicans, they were not going to win in 1952 and 1956. And so that's really a sign more of how much power unions actually had at that peak of union power than it is about Republicans actually respecting unions. And a lot of those people who would work for Eisenhower would later go on and work for people like Richard Nixon and Jerry Ford and Reagan, even, who were anti-union, more or less.
Now, you bring up Reagan, and for me, I go day one of Joe Biden's presidency, firing Peter Robb in a very at-will kind of way, which, just so much symbolism there for me. But he was one of those guys who, back, August 4th, 81, went and it was behind the firing of those Patco workers, and not just firing them, but going as far to ban them from all federal employment forever, blacklisting them from federal employment forever. That kind of vindictiveness, I think, was the symbol of that era. And for me, having him shown the door in the unceremonious way that he was, I hope is that kind of shot heard across the boardroom, that maybe it's open time for workers to organize.
Yeah, I think there's at least, a lot to that. I mean, I think that business, if you read sort of, business law stuff and things like that, I think there's a fear of a Democratic administration actually doing stuff for worker rights that hasn't existed in a really, really long time. I think that they can read the tea leaves and they can see what, the kind of support for Bernie Sanders has led to within the Democratic Party and how that's influenced Biden, and that Biden is making these kind of moves, such as getting rid of Peter Robb, and that they now 4-decade-long era of open warfare on organized labor It certainly isn't coming to an end because Republicans are changing, but the power structure in America is changing. Democrats have the trifecta, right? They have the House, the Senate, and the presidency, even if by narrow margins, and they're acting on it in a way that is pretty aggressive. They've learned a lot, I think, since 2009, and are moving forward legislation to help working people in a number of different fields that I think is really, really positive, and that we should be happy about, right? I think that sometimes we on the labor left get used to being disappointed in Democrats and almost, don't want to take yes for an answer. Take yes for an answer from Joe Biden. Keep pushing him, but take yes for an answer. Be happy about the gains that you've made and keep demanding more gains. And in this administration, there's a legitimate chance that you're actually going to get some of those gains.
That's an excellent point. And for me, we hear a lot of talk in the political world about, well, we need to unite the country, Erik. We need a moment of uniting. And I'll say the way we unite the country is by getting people better economic situations. I tell this story all the time. The day after the election, I was leading a strike, down the road from here. There were 55 workers on strike. 3/4 of them voted for Trump. They were out there unified, fighting the right fight against corporate greed, against globalization, and they were united in that fight. To me, that's the right fight. And giving people the tools to come together and unite around that, I think is a really good start in bringing this country back together.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's a much more positive message than the kind of thing that we're often seeing in the media around uniting the country, which is really uniting the country around principles that make, rich people who write for the Washington Post happy. A side of social liberalism, but economic conservatism where their taxes aren't going to go up. And that rhetoric is very powerful. And it's also very divisive in terms of everyday people, because all that power that is in the hands of the wealthy that these elites want is not in the hands of the people, which opens up more possibilities for racist or sexist politicians to come and divide the working class. And I think that, if you want to bring this nation, you're not going to bring the whole nation together. That's just not going to happen, right? That's a fantasy. But if you want to bring the most people together around something that is common to them, it is the issue of economic justice, and it's the issue of having rights at work, of having a dignified life. And whether you're black or white or Latino, or you're Republican or Democrat or independent, you probably face some of these issues. You're probably only a paycheck or two away from homelessness, and this is an issue that we've seen in the COVID era especially, but even before that, of course, affect almost all of us. I think all of us have been scared in one form or another in the last year about our economic stability, and that there is a possibility of bringing a lot of people together around this. And I think that should be a goal that we all have. And if those people who we haven't brought together, or yet, we're Trump voters, well, we're going to have to live with that, right?
Yeah.
If we want to make a better world, that includes including Trump voters, and hopefully getting them to see that there's a better way out there.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, and I don't have any visions of grandeur that we're going to be one giant kumbaya country. We've never been that. And it's delusional to think that we've ever been totally united, other than in moments of attack after Pearl Harbor, after 9/11. Those are the moments that for a brief period of time we were, okay, we'll put down our swords at each other, and we've got a common enemy. For me, the common enemy right now is the massive amount of greed, the billionaire class who's robbed us blind, and how do we make sure that people can support their families? And I point to this comment today that just got me insane from Dave Ramsey, the financial advice guy on the radio. Who had the audacity to say, I don't believe in a stimulus check, because if $600 or $1,400 changes your life, you were pretty much screwed already. You got other issues going on. And, saying that, this money's not life-changing, and it's not meant to be life-changing. And I agree, people are screwed, but he doesn't give any reason or ability for people to get unscrewed. And I'm saying this is the way we do it.
Yeah, no, agreed. I mean, it's basically a dishonesty by Ramsey to say this is, this is a policy he doesn't support because it's not going to fix everyone. Well, no, yeah, we know that. What's going to fix everybody? Making sure that people have, make sure the PRO Act passes so that people have the right to unions, that you don't, you have real fines against companies that violate NLRB policy, that you have, that you ban or limit extremely the right to work nonsense. Then, that you provide child credit, money for children to help people get through that. You expand the welfare state, you build up child care, you build up health care, you raise the minimum wage. These are the policies that need to be supported. And I don't really feel that Dave Ramsey would support any of those policies because he doesn't care. All right, this is the problem. He's got his little media empire around financial advice, but he's not offering any substantive solutions to these problems. And this is why he's so indifferent to somebody getting a $2,000 or $1,400 or even $600 check, because it doesn't affect him, and he seems fairly indifferent to the reality of most of the people who, this isn't going to save them, but it might allow them to stay in their house for another month. And if you're losing your house, that ain't nothing.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. But for me, and one of the frames that I want to talk about to wrap this up is, I've been talking a lot about this idea of empowerment and being a union member. I guess I'm someone who looks at at least job wise, economically, the half full idea. If I look at you, Erik, and you've got a good condition, you've got health care, you've got retirement, I don't go, you have it, I don't, screw you, we're taking it away. I ask the question, how do we get it? And I think by having more empowerment in the workplace, by giving people the ability to strive forward and not be, I don't want to use the word victims, but not be in an at-will situation where their employment is tenuous. I think you give people a little bit of a voice, and maybe we go back to those days, because I think back to my grandfather's generation. They were very much of, hey, how do I get what you've got? Instead of, hey, how do I tear you down? And right now we seem to be that society of how do we tear you down instead of how do we lift everybody up?
Yeah, no, there's no question that's a huge issue. And I think it's the kind of lost sense of solidarity, right? That so often people see what other people have and they want to take it away because they don't have it. And I think that we have to provide a politics for people, a framework for them to understand these things, right? That's what organizing is. I mean, organizing to a certain point is taking people who might instinctively feel like it's not fair that this person gets X, Y, and Z, and I don't have it, so I don't want them to have it. And to change that around and say, I want to make a connection with these people and join their union, for instance, or join a similar union so that I can live that better life. And I can send my kid to college or trade school or whatever. And I can take a vacation, and I can own a car, and I can buy a house, and all these sort of basic things that we expect as Americans, but that so many people don't have access to. And it's a problem. And I think that, part of the sort of revitalization of a labor left in the last decade, ever since, I guess, Occupy Wall Street really, has been sort of trying to reestablish those values in America. And I think that, again, the Biden administration is not the be all and end all of this, but it's a sign of how far we've come in moving stuff in this direction. We have a long, long ways to go, but we've taken those first key steps. And if we can build on those key steps, keep electing more pro-union politicians, keep pushing for more pro-union policies, come out in solidarity with other people, it gives everyone else confidence that they can make a change in their own lives too. And that's how you start undermining that negative feedback loop of trying to pull everybody down and instead create a society where we seek to build everybody up.
No, it's a much better way to put it than I did. And it's spot on. But Erik, I appreciate the time. I hope folks will check out the book, American History in 10 Strikes. We'll make sure we get links out. It is a fabulous read, and I highly suggest it. And I hope folks will check out the blog, Lawyers, Guns, and Money. Fabulous stuff. Erik, I appreciate the time. I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you very much, Rick. Appreciate it.
Good stuff, our friend Erik Loomis. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1903. That was the day that workers in Oxnard, California, took a united stand and showed the power of solidarity. Oxnard was a California boom town. The American Beet Sugar Company, owned by the Oxnard brothers, drew hundreds of workers to the area. These new arrivals included Mexican and Chinese agricultural workers who faced hostility from local white residents. The managers at Oxnard exploited this interracial tension. They intentionally exacerbated conflicts between the groups of workers in an effort to keep wages low. This animosity heightened even further when the federal government passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, severely restricting Chinese immigration to the United States. As the number of Chinese workers at the factory fell, the company recruited Japanese workers to take their place. They wanted to continue to divide and exploit their workforce. They required their employees to shop at a company store. They also paid their recruits less than was originally promised. But the company had miscalculated. The workers were fed up with these tactics. 500 Japanese workers and 200 Mexican workers walked off the job. Soon the number of striking workers had grown to more than 1,000. One Mexican worker was killed during the work action, and 4 other strikers were injured. But the workers stood strong together. The company eventually caved to the demands of the workers. The victorious workers then applied for union affiliation with the American Federation of Labor. But the AFL refused to admit the new local because it included Japanese workers. It would take a few more decades before the lesson of solidarity taught in Oxnard, California, would begin to be embraced by the U.S. labor movement. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
It's good to hear Erik, talking about how, this is the beginning of possibly something positive. The fact that the federal government is going to, and look, Biden's talked about a cabinet level working group to encourage people to join and form unions. That is a good thing. To have pure workplace democracy is a good thing. The ability to say, hey, we want to negotiate over what our wages, hours, and conditions are going to be, as opposed to the way things are now, to where they're just imposed, where you get something out of the benevolence of whoever the employer is, and with no rhyme or reason, just their benevolence. And then they tell you that, well, that's the market rate. No, that's an industry going, how low can we make wages to where we still can get people to come in, but how much can we cheat them out of? My entire work life, and I've talked about this for years, has been, okay, let's every couple of years sit down and open up the books. How much wealth did this corporation make off of our labor? We want them to make profit. We want them to pay their CEO and their shareholders and all that stuff. But we want our share too, because after all, without us, there's no that. So we want to share in that. We want to be partners in that. And this is a major mindset change for business in this country, because business for so long has had their hands firmly on the steering wheel and driving this economy into the ditch. We used to have an economy where a family could get by on one income. One union job could support a family and in a very good way. You could send your kids to college. You could take vacation. You could get the 2 cars in the driveway and have the house with the white picket fence. You could live the American dream. The idea that if you worked hard, played by the rules, you got ahead, that was alive and well. Because I know the Republicans love to talk about the meritocracy, but it was almost there. As productivity went up, Wages walked right hand in hand with it because the unions were there to collectively bargain and say, you know what, you're doing better, we need to do better. The idea of a fair day's pay for a fair day's work was something that was involved, was in the fabric of our country. And what's happened, middle 70s, Reagan, really, till now, massive redistribution of wealth from the wealth creators, the workers, to the people who the hardest day's work they do is shuffle money from one pocket to the other. So for me to see Joe Biden willing to move forward and a Democratic Party, hopefully that we can push to get something like the PRO Act pushed through to give us the tools to make this a more equal society, I'm 100% behind it. And I think it's a good thing because after all, I want you to do as well as I've done and better. I want us all to do better. The old phrase, we all do better when we all do better. It's that simple for me. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. It was an interesting week so far. I look forward to being back here again. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.